extreme thinking, which is otherwise known as black and white thinking or dichotomous thinking. So what is this extreme thinking, and what does this have to do with our healing? Well, it's essential in order for us to heal from the effects of complex trauma, narcissistic abuse, and any mental illness that we're dealing with, that we come out of extreme thinking. And it's very human to try to cope by thinking in an extreme manner. When we face attacks or abuse, it can cause us to become very afraid and distrustful. And so now we're looking for a way that we can keep ourselves safe. And so simple go-to is extreme thoughts or extreme strategies to keep ourselves safe, because we just went through a very extreme ordeal. So from the ordeal that we experience, we might say, well, now I see proof that I cannot trust anyone. This would be an example of extreme thinking in order to keep yourself safe. So your extreme thinking is a way of self-preserving. When you decide you can't trust anyone, or you can't trust men, or you can't trust women, or you can't trust tall people or short people, or wherever we had the trauma or whomever we experienced the abuse from, we categorize a whole type of person or just people in general, and we decide that we are not safe with these types of people. Some literally say, I can't trust any humans. I don't like any humans. I only like animals. Again, this extreme way of thinking is to keep yourself safe. So if you notice that you're having extreme thinking as we go through the examples today, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. You're trying to stay safe. But there are ways that we can keep ourselves safe without having to resort to extreme thinking. And there are many detriments to thinking in an extreme manner. One of the worst being that extreme thoughts lead to extreme emotions. So if we feel very angry, very sad, very anxious, part of the reason is because we have extreme ways of thinking and perceiving the world. So one of the extreme ways of thinking is catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion where we're anticipating the worst possible outcome to a situation. A good example of this is picturing that part in the movie where the family's driving down an open road and the music's playing and they're laughing and they're singing together and everything's just fine. And right here, when I describe that scene, what do you think is going to happen next? Well, for our catastrophizers, which is most of us, we think they're going to get in an accident. A truck is going to come and it's going to rear end them or broadside them or T-bone them or whatever. And so we're always thinking the worst case scenario. But in that way, we have that mini catastrophizing mode that's in our brain. So we can't even see something going well without thinking it's going to go really bad next. One woman said after a baby was born, she had a moment where the baby was sleeping so peacefully in its crib, and she started to feel so grateful and happy. And then all of a sudden she was terrified, because now what if something happens to my baby? And that's her thought. That's catastrophizing. It's very common, but what it is it's extreme thinking. So we're skipping off, instead of staying in a nice balanced place, we're skipping off into the worst case scenario, which is a bad place for our mind to be. Another way that extreme thinking can manifest itself is in fears of abandonment, the fear that if there's any form of distance or change in behavior, then perhaps that's an indication that we're going to be abandoned. So for instance, if you see your husband and he's not as responsive when he comes in, and then suddenly you become afraid that he's going to leave you. This is an example of extreme thinking. He just wasn't responsive to a couple questions, and now we think our marriage is over. You're already planning the divorce. You're figuring who's going to get what, how you're going to tell your mom, and all of this extreme thinking because he wasn't responsive. This is not a balanced way of approaching the situation. So we want to recognize in ourselves if we have the abandonment fears that's triggering us to think in an extreme way. On the other hand, we may have self-blame, so that we take excessive responsibility for bad things that happen, traumatic events. We're blaming ourselves for the actions of others. So it's like one of my clients said, after she was severely beaten and hospitalized, yeah, but I should have been more patient because I was yelling at him. And that's when he started beating me. So she found a way in her mind to blame herself for her boyfriend's abusive behavior. She said, I should have watched my tone, and then therefore I wouldn't be in the hospital. But is it really her fault that someone misused their strength against her and brutalized her and abused her? Of course not. That's extreme thinking. She jumped into self-blame. So instead of staying at an even-toned, well, I had my part that I played, but it's inexcusable for him to respond in this manner, she went to, it's all my fault. And sometimes it can feel better here for trauma survivors, because this at least gives us some sense of control. If I just learn to not be so responsive, not be so reactive, then I won't get beat again and we can still stay together. For some trauma survivors, it comes with their identity confusion. So like Sandra wanted her in-laws to like her. So she would people please to the detriment of herself. Like the one time when they decided that they would come and live at her house for a period of time. And instead of saying how she really felt, which is, hey, why can't you guys make your own arrangements, get an Airbnb, do something else? She said, oh, sure, of course you can stay. And when they came, she even offered her bedroom, which they took. And then so she ended up sleeping in the living room for months of her own house against her will. It really wasn't what she wanted, but she just couldn't help but to offer to do more and more for her in-laws because she wanted to please them. So she got caught in this people-pleasing trap. This is common for trauma survivors, but it's extreme thinking. Let me just forget that I exist and make sure that they're happy, and that will keep me safe. That's an extreme way of handling the situation, and it's not balanced. Whereas a balanced person would analyze the situation and say, well, my in-laws have needs, but I have needs too. And my primary responsibility is to care for my needs first. So let me make sure I have a bed. And let me make sure I have an environment that I feel safe in. Do I feel safe around these in-laws? And how long is it going to be? Should I set some limitations on how long they can stay? And this, she would now be engaging in a way of balanced thinking and reasoning, critical thinking around the matter. For some, like William, it comes down to distrust. So you get into extreme thinking and behavior because you're distrustful. So William was actually, he's a famous actor. I changed his name, but he was on a really famous sitcom, and he did really well for himself, but he would find himself in his real life sleeping with women. And what would happen is the relationship would go just long enough where the women were getting attached to him. And around that time, he would bounce. He would just disappear, kind of ghost. He was not a narcissist. He was a complex trauma survivor. So why was he bouncing and ghosting women? Because he was scared. He was afraid that if he didn't leave them, they were going to leave him. And his fragile ego couldn't handle the idea that someone would just reject him and leave him abandoned and alone. So he felt like the lesser of the two evils was just that he would leave himself. And so he would be breaking hearts of these women. Later, before his death, he wrote out an apology to all the women that he hurt because he was just sleeping with them, getting attached, and breaking the attachment and bouncing on them. It's out of fear. He thought it was a way of keeping himself safe, but it was extreme thinking. Another form of extreme thinking is emotionally numbing. So this is an example like Jessica, when she calls her boyfriend, who she's supposed to be in no contact with, he abuses her over the phone. It's her ex-boyfriend, by the way, but they're always off and on, off and on, off and on. So he says all types of mean, harsh, terrible things, calls her names, right? And then she feels terrible about herself. She feels awful. The abuse is so extreme that she just goes numb. In order to cope, she emotionally numbs. And then she's just like, I can't feel anything. That means she can't feel happiness either. She can't feel connection. She can't feel anything. Well, why does she emotionally numb? Well, because she can't handle the abuse. But why is she getting abused? Well, because she won't stop contacting her boyfriend. This is extreme thinking, extreme ways of reasoning. As a result, it has her in an extreme situation of emotionally numbing. Whereas balanced thinking would be, hey, I don't want to lose touch with my emotions. So what I'll do is maybe stop contacting the person that is detrimental to my health, my emotional well-being. That's balanced thinking. Now I can keep my emotions. But because she doesn't want to lose or be abandoned, lose that companionship, she takes the abuse and therefore loses herself, loses her emotions and numbs. On the other hand, for Emem, she won't call her therapist even though she's depressed because she feels like she's so flawed and damaged. She feels like she should be doing better, but she's not getting better fast enough. She views herself as fundamentally flawed and damaged due to her past trauma, which undermines her self-esteem or self-worth, and therefore she won't even call her therapist. This is an example of extreme thinking. I'm too sick to get better, so I won't get better because I'm too sick. I won't do the things that would lead to my health because I'm too unhealthy. She's paradoxical thinking. It's extreme thinking. As a result, she has a negative self-view that keeps perpetuating itself and causing more problems. So there's overgeneralization, which is also a form of extreme thinking. Overgeneralization is exactly what it sounds. It's applying negative experiences from your past to unrelated situations. Again, it's taking the past things that you've gone through, the abuse, the trauma, and then you're taking some other situation or person, you're applying it to all of them, to all situations. Let me give you an example. There's a woman online on TikTok. She says, men are incapable of love. That is an example of overgeneralization. I don't doubt that she has encountered men that were incapable of love. They exist. But there's women that exist that are incapable of love as well. Ask some of the trauma survivors in this group. They have moms like that. But when we take that experience of being abused by someone, even if it happened repeatedly, and then we formulate a huge generalization, that's extreme thinking. So now because these men are abusive, all men are abusive. Or because these men are incapable of love, all men are incapable of love. Or because your mom couldn't love you, then no woman can love you. Or because your mom couldn't love you, you can't love yourself. We keep generalizing our experience. If a person of a certain race mistreated us, then we say all of the people of that race. This is an overgeneralization. It's very common. It's very common, but it doesn't make it right. Just because it's common, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it helpful. Ultimately, it's cognitive distortion, and we have to root it out. Overgeneralization is a failure to recognize that every person is unique and every situation is unique. This is a new place, a new time, a new circumstance, and so we have to apply a fresh reasoning to each circumstance. Keeping in mind, yes, what we've learned from the past, but if what you've learned is that all of an entire group are something that they are not, you missed the lesson and went into a whole nother stratosphere of underthinking. So this is overgeneralization. And yes, it ferments wider stereotypes. For many, like Barbara, there's avoidance. So avoiding is when you've had trauma, then you start avoiding the triggers of your trauma. So if you had a relationship trauma, now you're going through life avoiding relationships because you're just like, it just scares me. It just scares me. So it's not an overgeneralization because you figure, hey, some people do have good relationships. I catch that, but I'm just scared, right? Or if you had a car accident, you avoid driving. That's avoidance. It's another form of extreme thinking. If you, like Barbara, she had a bad experience where she was actually attacked when she was outside of her home. As a result, she's developed agoraphobia, which is the fear of going outside the home. So she's stuck inside the house going, I can't go out there, I can't go out there, I can't go out there, paying high delivery fees on things that she would normally enjoy going out to get for herself. Why? Agoraphobia. What's that? Fear of being outside, fear of being around other people. Why is that? Because she's traumatized. Because she went out there and something really bad happened, and now she can't figure out how to keep herself safe except to keep believing that the same bad thing will happen if she keeps going out, so she limits herself. She keeps herself inside the house, figures that'll keep me safe. Avoidance is a form of extreme thinking. We mentioned people pleasing. Henry was a huge people pleaser. Henry felt like his worth was dependent on pleasing others. So when he was at work, he would never say no. They give him, here, can you do this task no matter how small, no matter how big? He would always be like, oh, yeah, sure. Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll get it done. He's a people pleaser. That is a form of extreme thinking. Believing that your worth is dependent on meeting the expectations and needs of others. Hold on. Your worth is dependent on meeting the needs and expectations of others, no matter how unreasonable? That's a recipe for disaster. That's not going to end well. So that's people pleasing, and it's extremely dangerous. So we want to avoid that. Another form of extreme thinking is perceived helplessness. Tammy doesn't believe she can do anything to change her situation, so she just complains and never speaks up for herself. At work, she never speaks up for herself. She just complains. She takes all the abuse. She takes all the assignments. She never speaks up for herself. Does the same thing at home, in her life at home. As a result of this learned helplessness, she's not making any progress in her life, and it just gets worse because she believes she can't. Therefore, that becomes the truth. She really cannot, because that's what she believes. That's what she reinforces. Learned helplessness is the feeling of powerlessness to change our own circumstances or to overcome challenges based on the belief that we are permanently damaged or that we are actually incapable due to our past trauma. So hopefully you're getting an idea of what extreme thinking looks like, right? So how do we get out of this extreme thinking? Because if we're thinking in an extreme way, then we're going to feel in an extreme way. And it can lead to impulsive and risky behaviors. There's a true story of a woman, I'll call her Jennifer, and she was mad at her boyfriend. So I don't know, they had some petty argument, but ultimately Jennifer decided, okay, you know what? I'm upset right now. So she goes home, she puts on a just small little dress, and she goes out to the clubs where she used to hang out, and just goes by herself to these nightclubs. Later, she tells her boyfriend what she did, and her boyfriend's like, what? You were mad at me, so you went out to seedy environments in scantily clad? Like, why would you do that? Like, something could have happened to you, and I can't protect you because I don't even know where you are. And she's like, well, I was mad. And that was the way she chose to handle the situation. So it was impulsive, a bit risky, but when her boyfriend said, well, something could happen to you, she said, I wanted something to happen to me. And that is extreme thinking. I'm angry, so now I don't even care what happens to me. Destructive, self-destructive. So our emotions become extremely intense and overwhelming. We have mood swings that can rapidly shift from extreme joy to extreme despair because we're not controlling the equilibrium of the mind. The subconscious mind takes perceptions and snapshots. It doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know if it's looking at your reality, something on television, something you dream, something you daydream, something you're remembering, something you're imagining. It doesn't know. But what it does know is that if it perceives that it's going to be a violation of the values, it drops cortisol into your system and you feel terrible. That's what the subconscious mind does. It's a machine. It's a computer system. It's not a person. You are the person. So you're the one with the free will to change your thoughts. Your free will allowed you to cognitively say, I'm going to tune in for this discussion because this discussion will be beneficial for me. That's not the subconscious mind. That's you. Until you train the subconscious to follow you and work for you. If you were to come to these meetings every week, your subconscious mind would eventually say on Monday, oh, hey, did you want to go to that meeting? And it will be trained because you train the subconscious mind. So since we are the masters of our subconscious, we must learn to train the subconscious mind so that it stops doing things for us that are detrimental, like having us go out and do risky behaviors or think in extreme manners. The automated way that your subconscious has learned up to this point, is go to an extreme to protect yourself. But that's staying in the animal brain. That's simple fight, flight, freeze response. We need to progress so that we're utilizing the tools of healthy disconnection, of healthy discussion, of healthy deliberation, of healthy deference. We need to be able to dissect everything and determine using discernment what it is that we are best able to do in a situation so as to get the best possible outcome for ourselves. We need to be more strategic. So are you a strategic thinker? Well, here's some tools that you can use to get out of extreme thinking. First thing we need to do is slow down. So let's use STOP. STOP is an acronym. Who knows it? STOP is an acronym. We want to be still, thoughtful, observant, and patient. STOP. We want to be still, thoughtful, observant, and patient. Memorize that. This will be a tool that you can use to help bring you out of extreme thinking. This is just step one, to be still, thoughtful, observant, and patient. So the first thing you want to do as soon as you are triggered into what would be potentially extreme thinking is you need to be still. Being still means that you're not going to take an extreme action. It means that you're going to hold your body right where it is. You're not going to move your arms. You're barely going to move your face except just to blink and breathe. And now you can finally focus on your breathing because you're being still. Breathing helps us to regulate the physiological response that we get. Do you notice when you get stressed or triggered, your heart starts beating? You might get a pang of distress in your brain or in some part of your body. Breathing helps you to slow down that initial pang so that you don't start acting immediately like, I got to do something. I got to move right now. I got to get out of this. Be still. That's the first thing you need to do. Stop, be still. Next is to be thoughtful. To be thoughtful means that we will now analyze the situation. What's happening? What's happening right now? So I utilize, to get out of extreme thinking, the acronym BOY. Stands for the bird's eye view, others, and yourself. So you want to analyze everything from three perspectives simultaneously. Extreme thinking is because we're analyzing things from one perspective, which is me and I'm scared right now. And so it's like fight, flight, freeze. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. When you analyze things from the standpoint of three perspectives, the bird's eye view, your perspective, the other person's perspective, simultaneously, it allows you to start to see things instead of in black and white in full color. This comes from the television screens that are actually made of the three colors. I believe it's green, yellow, red, or something like that. And what they do is they have all these three colors and they're used in rapid succession of each other so that what we're looking at turns out to be a full color picture. But when you look at something that's black and white, it doesn't have the green, doesn't have the yellow, it doesn't have the red in the picture. And so you just see gray. We want to see the world in full color, all the dimensions. So let's analyze things from three perspectives. Let me give you an example of how this looks. Your friends are having a party. They don't invite you to the party. Okay. Extreme thinking says, they're not about to not invite me. I got my keys. I'm going over there right now. Let me put my shoes on. Let's go. Let's go. I'm about to turn up. I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna turn up at their house. They're gonna open the door. I'm gonna be like, oh, hey, did you forget to invite me? Did you forget? And I'm just gonna walk in like I own the place. And then I'm gonna be like, go ahead. No, don't stop dancing. What do you got? Right. And next thing you know, you're out the door and you do something that you regret. Now you look foolish. You get the police called on you because you showed up somewhere you're not supposed to be, or everybody looked at you like you were dumb, or they made you feel even more rejected. Maybe they don't even answer the door. It could go really bad. You know why? Because we didn't stop to analyze this from three perspectives. We just went with our initial response, which in this case is a fight response. It's like, let's go. I'm going to run over there, right? There's also flight, freeze response, right? You could say, I'm never talking to them again. You start blocking them, right? And you're going through your phone, block. Why? Because they didn't invite you to their party, right? So this is an everyday scenario. This is not life or death. So there's no reason for us to respond in fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Those are extreme. Now it's time for us to respond with balance. And so when you analyze from three perspectives, what that's going to look like is you'll say, what? They didn't invite me to this party. I can't believe this. Okay, wait a second. I learned that I need to start seeing things from three perspectives simultaneously. Okay, so what's the bird's eye perspective? This would be like heaven's view. If you're up in heaven looking down on the situation, what do you see? Well, the perspective is whatever they did was their business, and that just shows who they are. And I need to be focused on my purpose, right? Because heaven knows I got more than enough work on my plate to do and important things to accomplish. Okay, that's true. What's the other person's perspective? I can't imagine why they would do this. Well, it could be that the other week I was ambivalent about the party when they brought it up because I wasn't sure if I was going to be out of town. It could be that they didn't have enough room for me. It could be that this was just a mistake. That's true. I'm not really sure. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what they think. And what's my perspective? Well, my perspective is that they are absolutely inexcused for doing this to me. But when I balance all these together, maybe I'm right, and maybe they shouldn't have done this to me. But in that case, then I should be focusing on my purpose, which is the bird's eye view. And also I have to balance in the fact that this could have really just been a mistake and they could mean well. So now when I put all that together, I think I'm not going to make a scene and I'm not going to block anyone. I think I'm just going to focus on my purpose tonight and do something that's really meaningful. I think I'm going to spend time with my family, my dog, my kids, whatever. So now we take a more balanced viewpoint and we just focus on something else. We get off social media. We're not looking for the updates. We're just focused on our purpose. That's balance. As a result, we don't get arrested. We don't get made to look like a fool. And later we might find out there was a good reason why we weren't invited, because they were actually all getting together to plan my surprise party. And now I know. So that is thinking from three perspectives simultaneously. That's how we want to analyze the situation. The O in stop means be observant. To be observant in a situation is to take note of the time, not just the time of day, but the time in the whole stream of your life. Sometimes we're triggered to flash back to when we were a kid. Like, this makes me feel like when my ex-husband or when my father or my mother did something really bad or serious, right? But if we take a moment to be observant, we realize this isn't that. This isn't that. We're not back there. We're here. We're safe. We're adults. We have rights. We have abilities in this situation. When we're observant, we can analyze more than just what we are projecting on the person, what we think they're feeling, what we think they're thinking. We can observe that there are more details and there's more nuance to be analyzed in the situation. And then finally, the P stands for patience. We have to be patient. We've got to be patient with ourselves. We've got to be patient with the other person. To be patient means to be able to endure discomfort, suffering, inconvenience without snapping. That's patience. Are you a patient person? Don't say no. Say yeah. Say yeah. Even if you're not yet, just say yes, because when you decide to be a patient person, you are now making that your reality by putting the thoughts into action. So make the decision to be a patient person, to be kind, loving, to allow time to pass without reacting, to not be so reactive, and to think. In doing this, we're able to handle situations in life with nuance and avoid being extreme in our thinking.